the Huntington welcomes you to the Actors Forum for Teenage Dick, moderated by Rosalind Bevan and featuring members of the cast of this production in conversation. All events at the Huntington include a land acknowledgement. The Huntington acknowledges that our physical spaces stand on the occupied homeland of the Massachusetts people. We begin by acknowledging the Massachusetts tribe, from whom the colony, province, and Commonwealth of Massachusetts have taken their name. We pay respect to the ancestral bloodline of the Massachusetts tribe and their descendants who still inhabit the land to this day. We honor and respect the many Native peoples who are connected to this land, past, present, and future, including the Nipmuc and Wampanoag peoples. And now, the Actors Forum.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today. I'm here with most of the cast of Teenage Dick by Mike Liu. I'm Rosalind Bevan, casting and producing associate here at the Huntington, and I'd love to just go around and have you all introduce yourselves, say who you play. Gregg, want to start with you?
Hi, my name is Gregg Mozgala, and I play Richard. I'll pop it to Shannon.
Hi, I'm Shannon DeVido, and I play Buck. Lewis.
Hi, I'm Reyes McWilliams, and I play Eddie, Portland.
Hi, I'm Portland Thomas, and I play Clarissa. And Emily.
And the last one, I play, my name is Emily, and I play Ms. Elizabeth York.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for joining me today. You have a show tonight. We have shows all weekend. So you're well underway, which is exciting. And I wanted to start by, this play is so funny and Mike is hilarious and his writing is so smart and so quick. And the timing is really everything. And your characters also have specific senses of humor that kind of meld together. So I wanted to know from y'all's perspective, what goes into the developing, like the intricacies of the humor as an ensemble? Was it immediate? Did it take time to develop? How do you get into the rhythm with each other?
I'll jump in on that and say I feel like it definitely takes time, and it really helped in DC once we got an audience in the room, because we make each other laugh, and Moritz is a great audience member in the room. But what makes him laugh is not always what makes audiences laugh. So calibrating that was really interesting. And then I think we're still finding it on some things, or we're still playing with it in a really exciting way. Gregg and I, last night, were having a conversation in the dressing room about some moment about the timing of a joke. And what's great that we have these, it's great that we have these legs of the show to sort of keep discovering new moments and keep tightening things. And I feel like that's just like an ongoing process with this incredible group.
Moritz is such a lovely and supportive person. But when we didn't have an audience, and he really wanted us to know that we were doing a good job and give us like real-time feedback. So he was always guffawing his head off out in the audience. And it got to the point where I was like, I can't hear Moritz laugh anymore. I just need to hear somebody other than Moritz guffawing his head off, and it was also sometimes felt not entirely genuine. Sometimes it felt like he just wanted us to know that he was out. I was like, that's not helpful. We really wanted an audience after a while.
I'm gonna say I loved Moritz's laughs. I knew when I heard him in the audience, I was like, yes, at least Moritz thinks I'm funny. But in terms of like process, I think the script itself is so funny that I felt like for me, that was such an easy way in of just like, let me just let the word, because I feel like you can get in your head so much about like, is this gonna land? Is this gonna be funny? And it's just like, actually just trust the words to kind not do that job for you, but sort of really service you in that way. And I feel like we were all able to actually just lean on the text and lean in with each other. And I love that we're able to do this multiple times, because I feel like having, like doing it in Woolley, having time away and then coming back, like having some space away from it and then finding these new things and we all know each other on like a deeper level than like we did the first round. So I feel like there's more trust in each other as actors too, which really helps with the comedy and like bringing more of that to life, which I think is interesting. I'm really curious to see like how Pasadena is going to work out too, when, you know, we've spent even more time on the text and working with each other.
Totally. Anyone else have thoughts? I think that's a great, oh, Shannon, jump in.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to say, I think that I always think that comedy is a lot about listening, much more than trying to land a joke, and listening to the audience as well as but mostly to your scene partners. And I think that everyone brings such a great energy, and I think the reason we keep finding stuff is because we listen to different things and we hear different things and we're reacting to those. And I think that's a lot of where the humor comes from, because if you're a sole participant in comedy, it never works. I guess unless you're doing stand-up, but sometimes that doesn't work either. I should know I bombed a lot of times. But yeah, I think the listening is really important, and we're all very in tune to what each other are saying. So that's very, very helpful.
And I think that kind of leads me to my question. I'm going to start with you, Gregg, because thinking about the audience as the sort of active participant in all of it too, and how Richard has various crises of morality, and he comes to us to share, and we're the first people, us being the audience, we're the first people he talks to and addresses at the beginning. And we root for you, even though we see you like leaning towards wickedness so early. And I'm interested about how you walk that edge with the audience and persuading us on your side. What is in your process, like what is your relationship to the audience?
Well, I think similar to the previous question, it's continually evolving, you know. But the closer I can get to them, I'm not physically close. I mean, you know, but I think see them as my mirror, as my best friends, as my confessors, you know, as my accomplices, you know. I think, and the discovery of that in that first moment when I enter, you know, this day is different. Why is this day different from all other days? Is like a question we often ask. In terms of like storytelling and dramaturgy when we address plays. So this is the day that Richard decides to make his move, right, for power at Rosalind High School. And he's got this, he needs to let these people know in on the plan, right? And the deliciousness in that and the joy in that, right? Even when it's going bad, right? Or it takes a turn, you know, I think that is, again, that comes from the original source material of Richard III, you know, and that worked, you know, this play has survived for over half a millennia. So I think, you know, to be able to have that relationship, you know, I've said this before in different interviews, but, you know, my relationship as someone who's disabled, who has cerebral palsy, you know, I feel like I'm in a constant relationship with an audience and negotiation when I'm walking down the street or in my daily life. And so to put that within a frame, right, and make it have this spectacular attention where I can actually have an engagement, you know, is really fantastic. It allows me to like work on a lot of different levels in terms of who this character is, who Gregg is, and how I negotiate that in my own life. So that kind of real life artistic blending, right, and crossover is really exciting. And again, with the audience, I'm finding new moments, right, and how they react in different points of the story, right? Whether it's a relationship with Eddie or Anne or the plan or whatever it is, you know, it's really, that can change. So allowing it to be, I think the best thing I can do is keep working to allow myself to be in relationship with them. You know, we are a team on this, you know, and I think that's really exciting, and I think a pretty rare experience.
Yeah, it's really cool. I've seen it, you know, many nights, and it's different every night in terms of like when the audience decides to buy in and like to be on Richard's side, or like when are they questioning him and when are they hesitant. And it's really, really cool to see you navigate that every night. Shannon, I have a question about Buck. Buck is so awesome. And We were talking about how like Buck, it has iconic Buck moments. They become like iconic to us here. And there's a particular moment too where that everyone, you know, I think you've gotten applause some nights of backing up, flipping Richard off. And can you talk about these little moments that make Buck Buck, and how you came to them? What was the process of finding moments like that? Because I know some are in the script, some aren't, and I'm interested in how you meet Buck and who Buck is.
Leslie Keeler, first of all, she gets the applause every night.
That's not true. That is not true.
She gets
that is untrue. Actually, I didn't even want to go tonight because I was like, oh, I haven't gotten to the last 2 nights. I'm failing.
She didn't get her own applause.
I hate it. I hate it. I feel like I'm stinking up the joint.
Oh my God. Sorry, baby.
Yeah.
I hope I didn't jinx it.
Come on. Let's see. How did I find them? I mean, I think the way I approach most characters is, how do I find myself in that character? And so I think there is a lot of me in Buck. I think that, you know, when we did it at the public, pointed out to me that they think I'm a very physical comedian, and I've never thought of myself that way, because you know, when you think of physical comedians, you think of people falling over couches, or I don't really know. But I think that I just do it differently, and I think that it's really interesting to me that somebody observed it that way, because my chair really is an extension of my body, and I feel like I use it that way to emphasize points and jokes, and or to use emotion, or to portray emotion. And I think that like, I think it's really important that people get to see that, because it's a different way of performing, and I don't think that you see it very often. And I'm very grateful to Gregg and Mike and Moritz for letting me kind of play in that space, and letting me do weird things like the backup thing. I think I was like bored one day, and I was like, hey, I'm gonna do this thing, and Gregg was like, okay, and then I did it, and Moritz was like, keep it, and so it's been in there ever since. And I think it's just little stuff like that just kind of, Moritz, our director, was very kind in letting me you know, figure that out, and just play in that space. I don't know if that answered your question. I apologize.
No, it totally does. And now I'm thinking back to all of those moments that, like, when you roll over the poster, and like those things like are very physical elements to her, you know, how she's feeling in that moment, and her sort of like maniacal side too, that Richard hints at too. I wanted to ask you really quick too, this moment at the end, like right before Eddie comes in to punch Richard, and spoilers alert, people have hopefully seen the show for this, but what, like that journey from having all of these laugh moments to like a really grounded moment for her where your heart just breaks, like what is that journey for you?
I have 3 scenes to sit off stage and think about it.
There you go.
I don't know. I think it's just a journey of the play. I mean, I think if you're paying attention to the play, everyone's heart's getting broken. And I think hers breaks at the end of scene 4 when he like turns on her. And then when she watches him kind of spiral out of control, you're losing a friend. You're losing your friend to this psychosis. And you're kind of like, what? Come back. We were friends. This isn't real. What are you doing? And I think that it's just a matter of listening to the play and staying in it, even though you're not in it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. That's great. Staying in it, even when you're not in it. That's awesome. That actually leads me to my question for you, Lewis, because I'm thinking a lot about, you know, Eddie is a bully. Eddie is mostly seen as a villain by us. There are so many moments where you're like, really? There are so many moments.
Yeah.
You don't say that. You can't judge you, but we certainly do. We, you know, we want to like punch you in the face sometimes too. But we see a lot of that like bravado melt away when he learns about Anne's abortion, which is always this moment for me that I'm like, whoa, I really see like Eddie for this person, this human, just as we've seen everyone else as a person and a human. How have you navigated playing Eddie, this like hilarious, like, you know, kind of numbskull in a way, but that really keeping his like earnestness and his like humanity in that moment? Like that must be a challenge to navigate.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I feel like Moritz was really helpful with helping me just ground Eddie in some kind of reality. I remember coming in the first week and sort of he talked about if we clown him, then he doesn't become as strong of an antagonist, and also we don't get to see him make that turn when he finds out about Anne. And I think there's, you know, for me it's like you can only sort of do one thing at a time, right? And so there's no opportunity for him to sort of be super vulnerable earlier in the play. And then when this thing happens, I mean, this is like, you know, he's 18 and he's never experienced any sort of event of this magnitude. And so I think there's just sort of, you know, I think about how I was dealing with emotions when I was 18. Not great. And, you know, there's an impulsiveness to him as well, which I think is really true to a lot of teenage boys. And we know about him too. I mean, it kind of gets played for a joke in the show, but that, you know, his birth father left him when he was a kid. And, you know, it's those little nuggets that you mine for that you go like, okay, maybe there's something, there's some hurt in here. There's some wound. There's something that gets activated when he finds out that his trust has been betrayed, or that she didn't even feel that she could tell him about this thing. So yeah, I think all of that is sort of in there. And you know, it's a credit to Mike's writing that he even allows that character to go from this person that we think we know and become someone who is kind of surprising. You know, how deep his feeling really is.
Yeah, and I love that because it is surprising, and it does, and it kind of goes back to what Shannon was saying, is that we kind of see everybody's heart get broken. And Eddie, and that includes Eddie too, which is, yeah, a testament to you, a testament to the writing. And I will say one of my favorite parts is the stallion pride with the microphone. I love it. It takes me back to high school, and I think that Eddie's character captures something really real about what it means to be a teenager. And so that's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh
it's fun to do every night. And yeah, it takes me back, but I don't know if it's in a good way. No, I was not that guy in high school, so, but I can see it in my head.
That's awesome. Portland, hey. I want to talk a little bit about Clarissa. And wow, Clarissa, she's just as ambitious, you know, as Richard, which is you know, a headbutt between the two of them. But I want to know what you think and why you think Clarissa decides to help Richard later on, and especially in the turning point of the play where she, you know, decides to send that first tweet with her very strong Twitter following. What parts of Clarissa lean towards that wickedness too? And I want to know why you think she goes there.
Oh yeah. I think, okay, so it's really funny because when I like first encountered Clarissa, I was like, oh, this is my shadow self. Like, this is, you know, the part of me, because like I'm an actor, you know, you're ambitious and like you have all these things that like, I don't know, Clarissa was just this like type A crazy, I don't even know how to describe it, but yeah, like just parts of yourself that you're like, I know it's there, but let me choose to not be that. So I can see why she goes to that extreme, because it's kind of in her nature. It's like that ambition to the point where it's like, oh, I'm willing to sacrifice anything to get what I want. Like I remember being in high school and like applying for colleges and being like, I have to get into the best college ever or I'm gonna lose it. And for her, she loses it, right? Like it doesn't happen for at least like what we think, you know, we don't know what school she ends up going to, but I feel like at this point it's not going to be Stanford. And I think that causes someone like her, and I know from experience, to like go off the deep end a little bit. So I think that's what it is. I think that's what makes her tick. I don't know if I answered your question, but
yeah. So it's almost like that the wickedness it's in there because it's like it goes with her ambition. It's like she needs to get to what she wants. And I wanted to also ask about your tantrum and developing that, and also like how do you play off of your peers on stage? Like it's such a fun dynamic to see her sort of spiral while everyone else is like the audience of this and wants it and like eats it up. So I just wanted to know what that's like for you. And also another one of those moments every night where the audience is like, ah.
Thanks. Yeah, I actually like really worked on that during rehearsals. I like remember spending like a decent amount of time with Moritz, just like really finding how far can we go with this? Like how far can I break down? And I think playing off of the other actors on stage, especially when Lewis whips out the phone and starts filming me, I think that's the trigger where I'm like, like this is ridiculous. It's over. This is gonna be on Twitter in 2 hours. Like, whatever, you're gonna see it. You're gonna see it all. Which is really fun to play with every night. And just like, again, playing with like those stakes of like this college, like college for me is everything. And like when that gets thwarted or like turned away, you're like, oh, my life is over. Cause like, I don't know how you guys were in high school, but like everyone, all of my friends were all like, best college ever. Like, oh, what college are you applying to? Blah, blah, blah. You know, the whole thing. So it's really fun to play with that breakdown.
I love that you have like a very distinct memory that you can go to that is, because it was like life and death. And then it is until you leave that it doesn't matter that much.
Right? And then you graduate
and you're like, wait, this doesn't really matter. That's awesome. Yeah, her stakes are high. Emily, I wanted to chat with you about, so Miss York, the only like adult in this world, which is so hilarious because she's also so funny and like a little unhinged and has a lot going on. But
you're a person in this cast, so
just
these are all very accomplished adults, and then there's me playing the adult.
Oh my gosh,
what's your question?
Well, I'm really interested in Miss York and Richard's relationship because it's one of those ones where we really see from his perspective in this interesting way, and the way he's sort of approaching you and approaching the relationship of his teacher. But she has a soft spot for him. She wants to see him succeed. She's clearly very frustrated and annoyed by the rest of her students. And I wanted to know if you could fill us in kind of like on her perspective of her relationship to this student, to Richard, and how do you see their relationship and approaching that?
In a couple of different ways. I said multiple times in rehearsals that she's not a very good teacher, or she has trouble setting personal boundaries. You know, she's very fast and furious with the favorites in a way that I don't think would behoove a real public school teacher to be. But I had a lot of empathy for her. We decided that this was kind of a mid-tier high schools, smallish town high schools. So, you know, not one that had maybe 3,000 students, but had a large number of students, large enough that maybe she is overworked, and it sounds like they're all working in some sort of, like most high schools, they're all working in an ad hoc capacity. So the gym teacher also teaches computer science and also tutors French. And, I think she does class counsel and English and theater, because the English and theater programs are usually together. I think she's just spread kind of thin. And I think that she has made some unfortunate assumptions about some of her students without actually getting to know the students. And I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt here and say it's because she's overworked, spread a little thin, and possibly has been doing this for a long time. So might be not as intellectually rigorous about her actual interactions with the students as she should be. And she makes some assumptions, I think, based on Richard's disability, which are important. It's important that she exists in the play for this reason. I think that this character exists in this play for the reason. She also had a disabled brother of her own, which she mentions a couple of times. And so many many liberals who don't question their own microaggressions and issues with race because they assume that they're liberal, they're not racists in their own way. I think because she assumes that she has a disabled brother, she knows everything that there is to know about the disabled experience, and she gets out a get out of jail free pass in terms of really doing any kind of investigation about this particular child and his particular issues. So she makes, on top of that, he's an intellectual kid and he's an articulate kid, which is huge for her. He does the work. He wants to talk to her about the books that she finds interesting. And how is she not gonna love that kid? So she paints him with a pretty broad brush of he's sensitive, he's special, he needs attention, he gets a free pass. She doesn't do a lot of rigorous examination of who he is as a real person. And she does the same to a certain extent with the other children in the class as well. But I think she does it from a place of, again, she's an important stand-in for the audience in a lot of ways because she's well-meaning and she's really doing the best that she can. It's not sufficient in this particular situation, So I have conflicted feelings about Miss York and her abilities as a teacher, but for the most part, I think she's very well. She's a public school teacher, first of all, so she gets like a 80% free pass right there for doing that labor of, that's God's work right there. Yeah, she's an important stand-on. I hope a lot of people in the audience recognize themselves. We did a talk back in DC, and there was an audience member who said something like, well, I think we can all have compassion for people with disabilities, especially, people with mental disabilities. And I was like, oh, okay, so that's something that Miss York does here in this play. And you just did it again. It's important to recognize individual experiences in the same way that you recognize individual people. And she fails to do that, I think, in this play. She says, you are my brother. I'm going to put these two things together in my head, and I'm not going to think about it beyond that. I don't know what her relationship is to Buck, which I find really interesting. It's not really explored because we only have an hour and a half in which to tell the story. We can't spin it out in all sorts of different directions, but I love her very much. I just think she's a flawed, well-meaning person.
Yeah, well, it's so interesting that you said that, of like, we don't really get to know much about her relationship with Buck, other than she gives her TA, she's her TA in multiple classes. But because we see it so much from Richard's perspective, that's really, so I'm really glad you illuminated that, and also illuminated how the audience can see ourselves in Miss York, and also like the consequences that she faces at the end, being responsible for a lot of these students on school grounds, and the way it drives his decision at the end. Like, he mentions resenting the fact that she, compares him to her brother. And so I think all of that is there, and it's so layered.
Yeah, I think she's doing, I think the assembly scene is important because and the Clarissa, all the scenes are important, but I think they highlight her general inability to always be in control of the situation. And these students are, they're a handful.
Sure are.
A lot. And again, I give anybody who has to deal with teenagers, especially that many teenagers on a consistent basis, gets gets a free pass to a certain extent, but because she struggles, you can see her like she cannot control any of her classroom. She has trouble controlling an assembly. She can't control a dance. She is trying really hard. She is stretched really thin. So a lot of compassion for her.
Well, you all do such an awesome job of bringing us to this world of high school, bringing the humanity back to that age group, and also like this story, Richard III, all of these things melded into this, it's action-packed 90 minutes. But thank you all so much for your time. We could talk about the show all day. I know I could. So thank you so much again, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Bye. Thanks.